Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's special panel discussion on immigration. We have three excellent guests tonight from very different perspectives. The first person that I would like to introduce is Laura Barlow. She is the member of Temple B'nai Israel here in Oklahoma City. She is on the Social Action Committee at the Temple, and she's going to be speaking to something that is very relevant to what the Social Action Committee has done recently. And it's going to be a personal narrative of dealing with a refugee family here in Oklahoma City. So, Laura, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. I'm Laura Barlow, as Michael said. One of the pillars of Judaism is tikkun olam, to repair the world. So the Social Action Committee, being of Jewish faith, also having the experience of the Holocaust and many Jews coming and migrating to the United States of America. So we have created some friendship with someone at Catholic Charities. And Catholic Charities will bring in the refugees of any faith. My family, their faith happens to be Muslim. They'll bring in those families, and they have contacted the temple. And we will set up an entire apartment, an entire life, an entire home, and welcome them their first night here with a dinner. I have a wonderful opportunity to spend with my family, Muhammad and Rokia, and then their three children, Iman, Hoda, and Daniel. When they came here, Muhammad always talks to me about the fact that I'm his sister, my husband's his brother, and so we come over every Sunday for lunch. And he told me that we believe the same love, respect, and we continue our love for each other and our relationship because we respect each other's religion. When they came to America, they were in Burma or Myanmar, Malaysia, and then they came here. They waited 6 years in Malaysia. In Malaysia, they were considered illegal. So they were not allowed to pray. They were not allowed to go to school. They didn't have many of the things that we do in America. And when they got here, I remember the first thing that Muhammad did was go to the mosque. He goes every Friday. So I pick up the girls from school, and then he goes to mosque every Friday. And I assume the Sunday lunches that we do are the part of the family. I really knew I was part of the family when Iman and Hoda called me auntie. And so from then on, they call me auntie, and I really feel it's such a big honor because when they came here, they had nothing. They knew nothing. They had nothing. And I just happened to be at that time a person that could help them, take interest in them, build a relationship. And that was beyond what the temple does. The temple mostly, when they do when they make the apartment, get it all ready, sometimes it happens where there's a relationship. But this one really, I guess really just planted a place in my heart. So I think what we find, Muhammad and myself, we find what's more in common with our religions, not what is different than our religions. A new family just moved here, and he is a friend of Muhammad's from Myanmar. And what was interesting was, I guess 2 weeks ago, they went to the mosque, and Rafiq started crying because he hasn't been able to pray for 6 years. So when they come to America, it's the freedom of everything as far as being able to go to school and work, but the freedom of religion is something that they haven't had. And when they come here, they get to have that.
Laura, can you kind of explain? They escaped from the genocide that was going on in Myanmar. Do they talk to you about their experiences living in Malaysia, outside of the fact of what you just mentioned right here, of what they've gone through, what they went through, what it was like there for them, and then uh, coming here to the United States as a refugee?
Yes, they would get spit on, and I know he told me at one point that if you didn't have cash and if you were sick, ill, or had an emergency, you would not be able to get service. That the Muslim people did not have the same kind of benefits as the other Malaysians. Muhammad's parents live still in Burma, and I know his sister lives in Burma, and he's very worried about her because she's an advocate, so she is out there when they're killing and asking for freedom from Burma. So I know that he has that part of him still in Burma. When they get here to America, it's things that we take for granted. Social Security, going to the DMV, going to get the shots, going to Social Security. I have to say that I have never been to some of these places in all my years in Oklahoma. But what they have to go through are the beginning stages of living as for freedom, and it they come, but they are excited and they come, but they are also very, I wouldn't say scared, and something anxious, but they so appreciate wanting to be here. But they also, they have a fear. It's going into everything. They have to learn English. They have to get jobs. They have to find cars. So their life of freedom starts here, but it's also their life to learn a whole new world.
Can you explain a little bit about how the kids have reacted coming here and having to start school and learning English and what that's like for a refugee child?
Sure. So Iman was in second grade and Hoda was in kindergarten. They spoke no English at all, and we just immersed. They just went straight to school. They came here in March, and I think we started them April. And you have never seen such delighted children with their smile on their face because they love going to school. They used to see children. Muhammad said they used to see children in Malaysia going to school, and they always wanted to go. And so those girls get so excited. I took pictures of them on their first day, Auntie. They were so excited to go to school. Every single day, they just get so excited. So they came here. It will be 3 years in March. They were totally immersed. Muhammad knew English, and those girls they're doing great. Iman's in third grade and is like reading past third grade level, and Hoda is in first grade reading past first grade level. So their English came along really well, and they just love going to school. It's something that is so special for them, and they just love to learn. They love learning.
Did they talk to you at all about what their experience was like in Malaysia? Did they have their own apartment there? What was it? What was the situation there that they had to go through?
So they all live in one house. Rokia, the mother, I believe that the parents own, I think we would call it a restaurant, but I can't. So they all lived in one house, and they lived in, I think many times all of them sleep in one room. So when they come here, they are very surprised when they have their own room or their own kitchen. So I believe that the family all lives together, generation. But I also know that there is a sense of fear living there as well because of what could happen, or because of some of the things that they've seen. Muhammad tells me some of the Muslim could get hurt on the side of the road, and no one would help. No one would help because of their religion. So I think that their lifestyle was very different than it is what they're living right now.
Can you talk a little bit about the family that we just resettled here?
Yes, so we have a new family resettled here. I have this all down: Rafiq, Swabera, Zaket, and Twalaha. And the fathers happened to be friends in Malaysia, and it was just by chance that they came to Oklahoma. So now I am auntie times 3, 4, and we welcome them into our home like just as they have been there. It's so wonderful for the mother, Rokia, to be able to, she doesn't speak English, to be able to talk with someone that speaks the same language, and they have the same cultural things in common, and it's really endearing when both those families get together, which they do often, because it's like you would have never known they've never met each other before. It's they have a sense, the culture just has a sense of belonging and being with one another. I know Muhammad, when he makes food, he takes it to everybody from Burma or from Malaysia. In Oklahoma City, he packs it all up. They have food, and he takes it to a lot of families in Oklahoma. So I know that they are very strong in their faith and strong in helping others. And I think that when they were in Malaysia, their life was so drastically different as far as freedom of prayer, freedom of school, freedom of most everything. They knew they were an unwanted religion and group of people in Malaysia.
How long do you think it took them to lose the fear of being here in the United States, coming from one genocide country and the second country that didn't actually want them, and then all of a sudden coming to America? Did they still have those fears, and how long did it take them to give that up?
I think Rafiq and Swabera, the new family, I think they still have those fears. They don't have quite the independence yet. Muhammad, he works hard, he works long, and I think he's so delighted that he has control of what and where and who they are with, what they eat, where they shop. So I think it takes, I would bet it takes more than a year. I just think that with Muhammad and their family, we created such a wonderful relationship that they could count on me to take the girls to school, call the doctors for them. Those kinds of things are very difficult for them, like the calling professionals or getting something done. So I don't think that they don't come here and just feel freedom at last. I think they come here and they know that it's going to take a long time, but they want to do it, and they're so willing to work hard.
I should have probably asked you this as the first question. Outside of the fact that we provided Catholic Charities provided gets the apartment for them, and then we furnished it and got everything set up for them and stuff. Okay, take us through the rest. What happened after that? Because you said they have drivers. I mean, they had to go to all the various kinds of things. Take us through the process of what it's like to be a refugee coming here.
So they don't have cars. The temple actually, with one of our friends, purchased a car for Muhammad. And Muhammad now pays it forward and drives the other family everywhere. So the first thing I did was I just take the girls to school every day because they couldn't walk. The DMV, Muhammad got his driver's license, and he was a taxi driver in Malaysia, so he knew that really well. And then for Rokia, she just got an ID, nothing for driving or anything, just an ID. And after they started doing that, then we went to Social Security, and they had to get their Social Security card. But it's interesting because they have this form, and it's a refugee travel form. And I just realized, Swabera had to go to the doctor, and I just realized there's this piece of paper that is the only reason they're here, but the only reason they can really stay here. It's one where we give to the doctors, where we get anything that they need. That piece of paper is what gives them the ability to be here and have something, because they don't have anything else with their name on it. So it's just the government piece of paper. It has their picture that they can be here. So taking those steps is finally getting away from that piece of paper and the Social Security card and everything, and getting to where you have your own Social Security, your own license, your own green card. But it takes a lot of effort, and it requires a lot of help. There are a lot of people in the temple, in our community, that are willing to help, willing to drive, willing to take food, but also willing to be there when they need something that they're not able to get on their own.
Did you help enroll them in school?
Yeah, that was fun. So yes, I helped enroll in school, and I have to say that I used to teach, so I was I knew what I was doing, and it was interesting because I was putting their names down, and the oldest one was Umi Iman, and so I called her Umi because it was easier for me to remember. Rokia is like a chauffeur. Muhammad was easy. Hoda was the girl on TV. So I called her Umi. And so we're at school, and we're getting them all done and writing all the thing. And I put Umi. And Muhammad said, no, her name is Iman. I go, I've been calling her Umi for a month. He goes, you can call her anything you want, Davey, just anything you want. So that was a lot of paperwork too, for free lunches and getting them enrolled in school. That's a lot.
So is it worth it? Laura, is it worth it?
So I love them, and they love me, and they live in my mom's house. And
anything else you want to add?
My girls love them as well. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like the kind of help that you can give someone, and the love that they can give back, that just makes it all worthwhile.
Great. All right. We may come back to you in a little bit. Okay. The next speaker that we have is someone I look very forward to hearing, Linda Allegro. She is the executive director of the New Sanctuary Empowerment Program in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It is an anti-deportation program. So that is something that I'm very interested in. So Linda, with you, got the floor.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me on. New Sanctuary Network Tulsa was founded 4 years ago. Actually, when Trump won the election, a group of churches in Tulsa got together, and they wanted to do something about the horrible narrative that was being, and hateful rhetoric that was being spewed out of the Trump White House. And so a group of churches got together, and they formed the New Sanctuary Network. These are B'nai Emunah congregation, Fellowship Congregational, Fellowship Lutheran, and All Souls Unitarian Church. These are the four churches that got together and said, we've got to do something. We got to speak up. And so we started congregating in front of David L. Moss Criminal Justice Center, which is the local jail here in Tulsa, every Friday at noon. And we started to protest. ICE. In other words, specifically the relationship of our county government with ICE. A lot of people didn't even know. It was like really under the radar for a lot of people, but the local jail had a contract with ICE and had 200 beds set aside just to hold ICE detainees. And not only was it a cost to the taxpayer, but it was just a lot of moral questions about why is our jail, housing immigration detainees. They were bringing people up from the border and putting them in a jail situation when they're seeking asylum. There were just a lot of questions that we had about this. And so it became a weekly ritual. We would go to the county commissioner meetings and call for the end of 287G, which is the contract between the local county sheriff, the sheriff's department, and ICE. Well, after a few years of organizing, we got them to end one of their contracts. So the 287G contract still exists, and of course, they still are deporting people out of Tulsa County. But they ended the IGSA contract, the Intergovernmental Service Agreement, where the jail serves as a warehouse for ICE detainees. So that is gone. So we see that as a victory on our part, and that's because of our organizing skills and our mobilizing around social justice issues. But now with the Biden administration, things are changing a little bit, and plus this win of ending the IGSA contract. So we've regrouped as an organization, and we've decided to become a 501c3, that we want to expand our mission and our reach. So we've become El Centro, New Sanctuary Empowerment Center. So we went from this activist organization that was out protesting in front of the jail to now a formal 501c3, where we can offer many more programs and services to the immigrant community, continue to do the work around fighting deportation and the separation of families, but also expanding our mission to also get into the area of labor rights and workers' rights. So that's something that we are expanding, and we're really excited. We have a Know Your Rights training tomorrow at noon. It's a virtual training with one of our local labor lawyers, Stephanie Duran, for those who might be interested in attending that. And we want to talk about this question of, like, how do we empower people, beyond simply offering services? How does the immigrant community and allies and others, organize to access, power, essentially, to have a voice in civic life and in decision making. So, yeah, that is really who we are. So I know that's a lot, but just to give you just a kind of an overview of our history and where we are. We took the name of New Sanctuary because you'll remember that back in the 80s, there was the American Sanctuary Movement, which very much in defiance of border laws. What we saw in the 80s is a lot of churches who would take in refugees from Central America, who were fleeing horrific violence in Guatemala, in Honduras, in El Salvador, and would take them into their churches and would house them there, kind of, even though it was against the law. But they would say, well, there's a stronger calling here. These are people that are, needing safety. And anyway, I'm sure you're familiar with the sanctuary movement. And if not, I'm sure, you would invite you to look it up and look up people like the Reverend John Fife and other great trailblazers who, in the spirit of other great people like, the Underground Railroad or others who have been willing to take people into their churches and homes, who, even though it might be breaking the law, know that these are individuals that truly need safety. And so the New Sanctuary movement is kind of very much in that spirit of the sanctuary movement that came before us, but now crafted under different administration and with different goals. But still, I think that the focus is really this issue of deportation. I mean, I think it becomes kind of normalized, like we can just discard people, we can just dispose of people, we can just deport people. But at closer look, this is really a horrific thing. Many undocumented immigrants that live, in our midst, that live in our neighborhoods, that live in our state, in our city, often have deep roots here. They've been here for years. They have US born children. They have jobs. Sometimes they have homes. They might have a run-in with the law. We could talk about that. And there's a lot of different, layers of what you can be deported for. Under the Trump administration, it was like everything was collapsed into the same categories. Like if you were undocumented, it doesn't matter. You're still going to be deported. So it doesn't matter if you committed a horrific crime or if you had a traffic violation. People were getting kind of collapsed into the same category. And so I think that what we are trying to do is raise awareness and visibility around the question of deportation and this just easy disposability of people. And what does that mean? And we know firsthand the trauma that it creates for families left behind, and they're questioning these practices, especially when there is no pathway to citizenship especially for Mexican, predominantly Mexican immigrants and other immigrants in our communities. So yeah, that's a little bit of who we are, what we do, and I think I was kind of prompted to speak a little bit as to what the church, different churches and people of faith and synagogues and other people of faith can do if they want to get involved in this in this struggle and in this issue.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah, sorry,
is this sanctuary in Tulsa, is it part of the national one, or is this just you all? And that's the name that you took.
Yes, we're just the local chapter. I mean, we're just the local organization, kind of a grassroots organization that sprung up, but very much aligned with the Sanctuary Coalition in New York City, for example, and other sanctuary movements all over the United States. But yes, we're kind of autonomous and we just focus mostly on very local issues.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead with what you were going to talk about.
So yeah, I just wanted to just say a little bit about, well, you might be asking, well, what can I do? And I'd like to get involved in this, and we do have friends in Oklahoma City that, that we the Mayflower Church, for example, have been friends of ours. The ICE check-ins are all in Oklahoma City. So one of the things that Pastor Álvaro Nova, who is one of our founders, and he's with the Lutheran Church, Fellowship Lutheran Church, what he's brought and his vision has been to really develop this accompaniment program. And accompaniment is this idea where you truly stand in solidarity with people who are really afraid, and you stand with them and you accompany them in their journey to check in with ICE and to check in with the immigration courts. So we have traveled to Dallas. Of course, under COVID, a lot of things was put on hold because things were canceled or there were virtual meetings. But we accompany asylum seekers to their check-ins in ICE, which they moved the location, and that was kind of, very cumbersome. But especially because it's an hour and a half drive to Oklahoma City. But thanks to our network in Oklahoma City, we've had friends who have physically gone to the ICE office to make sure they're open, to ask questions, or to get in line. Usually there's a long line to stand in line as they wait for us to arrive. But this idea that, if one thing that we can do and one way to express our solidarity, our empathy, our compassion for people who are seeking safety and who are afraid that their case won't be believed or afraid that they will be separated from their children as they go in front of the courts who will decide their fate, you can stand with them. We can accompany them, and so that's one very tangible thing that we can do. I think that now post-COVID-ish, we're going to see those picking up again. Again, they were virtual meetings, but we will have a need for people to accompany to Dallas and Oklahoma City, or if you're already in Oklahoma City, maybe just touch base with us to see how we can network to coordinate our trips. But that is something very tangible that we can do. I also invite you to follow us on Instagram and on Facebook, or visit our website, New Sanctuary. We're as I said, our name has changed. We're El Centro, the center, El Centro, New Sanctuary Empowerment Center. We often post people, people trust us. We've developed relationships with the immigrant community now for 4 years. So we have all kinds of requests. We have people that, need cash assistance. They need a place to stay. They need a bus ticket they've just been released from detention and need to get to point A to point B. So we have many opportunities for people to donate goods and services, or donate food, or to help with transportation needs. So if there's a language barrier, and of course most of our the people that we serve are Spanish speakers, but really they're really from all over the world. We've helped Chinese immigrants. We have people from Pakistan. We have people from all over the world. But if the language barrier is the issue, that's not a problem. We have plenty of translators. The point is that if you want to get involved in immigrant justice, there's plenty of ways to plug in. And I just invite you to get to know what we do a little bit and let us know who you are, and we can think about ways to collaborate.
I will get in this more with Rex in just a moment, but do you see the changes with this administration? Have things, is there a noticeable difference as far as ICE is concerned and what is happening?
Yes, I think there is a very noticeable difference. I think that a lot less people are getting deported for minor crimes and for traffic violations and misdemeanors. We don't get those calls, but we have a hotline, which I'm happy to share the hotline number with you. Those frantic calls about my son has been pulled over and now he's facing deportation, those kind of calls have gone way down, at least in Tulsa County. So that's one thing that's noticeably different, because I think the Biden administration is reverted back to the Obama administration years, where they had this kind of prosecutorial discretion, where, it's depending on the type of crime, where you're going to face deportation based on a type of crime. Whereas I think under the Trump years, it was just like this collapsing of everything into this one category, like you don't belong here if you're a foreign national, very, very offensive and very racist, really, and very xenophobic. So I think, and also at the border, things are changing, because what the Trump administration did is that they imposed what's called the MPP, the Mexican Protection Protocols, where if you have an asylum case, you have to wait on the Mexican side of the border in these horrible makeshift, refugee camps, and we visited them. You can't, and you have to wait. Sometimes it was dragging on for months, even years, in these horrible, very dangerous refugee camps. Well, that is starting to be lifted. So under the Biden administration, they're starting to allow more people who are waiting in Mexico to now be able to enter into the United States, to get processed through detention centers, and being released to their family members that are waiting for them on the U.S. side of the border. So we're seeing more of that, and that is something that's noticeably different.
You mentioned in the beginning of your talk about asylum seekers, and they were thrown into jail here in Tulsa?
Yes. So the local jail here, David L. Moss Criminal Justice Center, had a contract. They actually had this contract for many years. I want to say like 10 years. So this predated the Trump administration, but they had this IGSA, Intergovernmental Service Agreement contract, where they would rent out 200 jail beds for asylum for immigration holds. Okay, and so there were several buses that came up from the border. These were people who were literally handcuffed to their seat from the border all the way up to Tulsa, Oklahoma. So that in and of itself was a horrific journey of 18 hours being, tied to your seat. Then to get to to David L. Moss, to then be thrown in with the general population. It's a jail. And so even some of when we went in with the TU Law School and with the lawyers that were helping to help process some of these cases and the interpreters, and we'd go into the lawyer room, they would handcuff them to the wall. And so some of the asylum seekers were like, why this treatment? We're here seeking asylum. We're not criminals, So I think that it just raised a lot of questions for us. And we started to ask the sheriff and ask the county commissioners, why are we in this business of holding detainees in our jails? There are other detention centers that have popped up throughout Oklahoma. Okmulgee has a big one with over 250 beds. We have protested there as well. That's very difficult to get access to ICE. We more likely to get through our sheriff, who is an elected official, to have him respond to us. Yeah. But it has been very challenging to speak to ICE directly. But we're trying to raise the visibility, and we don't want more detention centers built in Oklahoma. we are overpopulated. Our jails are overpopulated as it is. And so, sometimes people are released on bond. The bonds are extremely high. They're in the thousands of dollars, sometimes in the tens of thousands of dollars. Other people have ankle monitors placed on them, which they have to pay for that. These are, again, asylum seekers, people who are fleeing violence and are looking for safety in the United States.
I'm going to go to Rex here in just a second, but when you talked about the sanctuary churches back in the 80s and stuff, that's what John Lewis would call getting in good trouble by doing that.
That's a good way to put it, yes.
Our next guest is Rex Friend. Rex is a Quaker activist who is a lawyer and does immigration law, and he's going to talk to us about some of the policies that exist now and in the past. Rex?
Thank you, Michael. Good to be here. And I'm going to do one thing out of order. My leading edge is I was able to be part of America's most recent asylee this week. I spent up till almost midnight yesterday in Houston, and I had an asylum case. That was the reason I went down there. It was a person who's a protester in the anti-coup movement against the Myanmar military government. He's a student here, and he had done a lot of coordination and blogging and connecting and raising money amongst Burmese abroad or Myanmar citizens abroad. And he would have been arrested, tortured, detained, and killed if he had been returned. And so these jobs are never easy. When I decide that I'm going to say yes to trying to save a life in what is essentially not any more sophisticated than a traffic court situation. But it all turned out well, and it's incredible how ready someone is to celebrate when they're suddenly free of fear of death and torture. And it was just a wonderful week, and it's still with me tonight, even though I'm a little tired because the plane didn't get in until about 10:50 last night. Then I had to get home and do some catching up on things that you get behind on when you're out of town.
Is he here in Oklahoma, Rex?
Yes, he was.
He is. Well, maybe we need to hook him up with the families that from Miramar here, so that they can have another relationship here. So if we can get your information and hook it up with Laura, then I think that would be great. So, okay, go ahead now, then,
That's a God thing, Michael.
Yes.
Well, I have kind of framed my talk to cover some of what I think is the foundation and the background of why we're the people doing what we're doing, because I think that's key if we're going to grow our movement. And so I'll speak from my perspective, and it won't be right for everybody, but think not to disagree with my perspective, but to use your faith tradition and your perspective to articulate the foundation from which all of this energy to do good for immigrants springs. As a Quaker, people of our faith have been hanged, and I mean hanged to death, in Boston Commons for speaking our truth. And so we can identify people that are targeted because of their faith. And also we know, as we did in the sanctuary movement in the early 80s, that we team up with people of other faiths because there's not enough of us to do all the transporting in the Underground Railroad. And then what kept us in Oklahoma from becoming indicted, charged, convicted, and imprisoned because of what we did was how broad was the faith community that didn't do what we did, but they were willing to stand behind us doing what we did. And that was different than states like where John Fife or Jim Corbett or Jack Elder were, and there was a lot of other people, and I'm not naming all of the key people. So this movement is not about us, it's about everybody standing where they can with regard to the need to meet those who are despised in our midst. In my tradition, I say we care about immigrants because of our common humanity, because of the dignity of just being human. All of us are one. For some of my friends that are not faith-based, I say it like this: some aspect of every person is ultimately good. And as a Quaker, I would say there is that of God in all people. And due to this, the God within me honors the God in the other. We are to love God, ourselves, and our neighbors. And we've been taught that our neighbor is the other, even, and I would say especially, those whose values and actions we despise, those that have done things that cause us, if we're not careful, to hold them in disdain and have contempt for them. Last week, I was able to get adjustment of status for someone who was having problems because he had served in the Salvadorian military in the battalion that was responsible for massacres, part of the death squad. I'm Quaker, pacifist. I despised the action of the death squads, and I become great friends with Raymond and his stepson Franklin. And no one, particularly not Raymond, is all consumed by what he did when he was drafted into the Salvadorian military. He's a Hispanic Baptist preacher in Oklahoma now, and he's absolutely the best of the best with regard to caring in a non-judgmental way for people that are struggling. So I stretched myself to take a case that I, in some level of it, said, let this cup pass me by. And the stepson of Raymond that was the petitioner for Raymond, he was a sniper in Iraq and very decorated. And again, that stretched me. I despise people that their job is to kill human beings at a distance. He killed them up close too. Had a lot of post-traumatic stress syndrome. And the stepdad, Raymond, the person that had served in the Salvadorian military, was key in his becoming able to be a whole human being as best you can and to go on with his life. And he's presently employable, even though he was an out-of-control alcoholic after serving 2 tours in Iraq. One of the things that I say, and I think it's some version of this is helpful to everyone, when people don't understand where we are on immigrant rights, say if we studied our scriptures, and if people of our faith studied their scriptures in, let's say, Guatemala, and if it's our faith that is what is key in our lives, we would have similar understandings. We wouldn't be able to talk about those people and what they're going to do to American prosperity, because we would be talking about we have the privilege, but we need to know that that is not a God-given thing. That's luck of the draw. And we're called and required to be present for those who are most in need. Again, in almost all faith traditions, different words are used, but it's very universal. During the sanctuary movement, we heard from priests and bishops in Central America that use terms like preferential option for the poor. That is so un-American, but that's where we need to be, and we need to be able to use that language if we're going to have an understanding amongst our families, our friends, our neighbors of why what we do is important and needs to be much more universal. I'll talk about some of the cases that I've done that gives me an opportunity to be on the front row, and I'm just tremendously grateful for this. I've worked for someone from Kazakhstan, but on the China side of it, that had to deal with the same level of mass detention that the Uyghurs have had to deal with. And we don't know the truth or the scale, but possibly 3 million people subjected to cultural genocide. And I worked with a dad and his son, and the mom was back in constant danger of being put into the reprogramming center that the Uyghurs and the Kazakhs had to deal with to be assimilated into Chinese culture, to give up their ethnic identity and their Muslim faith. I've worked with Christians from Burma or Myanmar, and again, they're a despised and persecuted majority, just like everybody else has already heard, the Rohingya. Some of the work I've done isn't just about faith, but about equality. And that's been important work, and I won't leave that out, that I've worked for women that have been horribly abused because of the worst of paternalistic cultures and governments that won't protect victims of abuse, successfully for those people to now have asylum and permanent residency and citizenship finally, even though their persecutor was their husband. I've worked, and sometimes I know I'm out of my cultural competency, but I've worked for numerous victims that fear female genital mutilation. And we've had a recent success in court, which during the last 4 years, those were pretty few and far between. And I say recent, not during COVID, but before COVID, of someone. And we didn't expect that, but the story was just so overwhelming that it couldn't be stopped, and the courtroom just became a place of mercy. And my friend who's helping me to zoom in with you tonight was the actual attorney that litigated that case, Hussein Dabari. Say hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
Right.
And I've worked for a lot of people from Cameroon, and the thing that causes them to be a persecuted minority is that the government, the administration, the military is French speaking, and they're down to hell because they're Anglophones, and their villages are burned, and their homes are burned, and they're killed. Again, getting beyond my cultural competency, it's not good for people of other gender preferences in America but it's way, way worse in some of the countries that people come to me from if they're gay or lesbian. And again, oftentimes they're people of no faith because they've been hammered by the faith they were born into to be normal and to be reprogrammed. And they hate all of that God talk. And I have to be careful with my language. Quaker, I'm not that much into the God talk, but I'm treading on toes when I work for an atheist lesbian that has been horribly mistreated by her family and her extended community. And now she's going with me to the Houston Asylum Office. And again, I am blessed to be able to establish rapport with people way different from me and to be there for people. I'm not Black, I'm not young, I'm not lesbian, and yet it somehow works.
Rex, we're starting to run a little short here. How do you see immigration policy changing right now? If you can kind of in a nutshell see changes coming. Have you seen changes happening already? Executive orders obviously are one thing, but it's not going to be permanent unless we get the policies changed through law. So how do you see it?
Policies have to change through law, but they have to change at the boots on the ground level also. And the officers I'm in front of became more and more Trump-like over 4 years of being required to be more and more Trump-like. And I'll be sure to mention that I consider Obama the deporter-in-chief, and I know I'm not popular saying that, but he was way more efficient and effective in deporting than any other president has been. But I see policies changing even as clear as what happened in my fellow from Burma, Myanmar this week. The officer was able to be moved in the direction of mercy and generosity just because he mentioned he had a daughter at home, and why he mentioned that, I don't know. But I asked about the age, and I said, I think when you go home today, you want to be able to say that you helped someone to be free from persecution. And he really liked that. That fit. He took that and went down that path. And I say things similar to the officers here in Oklahoma City that I'm regularly in front of. Doesn't it feel good to be free from being required to be harsh and cruel daily? And they say, Trump didn't have any influence on us. And I say, okay, I will keep coming back and I'll keep visiting with you. So I do think there's a lot of good policy changes, but it's questionable. And I have to advise clients, is there going to be comprehensive immigration reform? It's a hard question to answer. Is there going to be non-comprehensive immigration reform? Is there going to be a DREAM Act? Is there going to be more refugees coming in under Biden than we had under Trump?
We're already seeing that. They are already coming in much more than
due to people like the ones on this call, because it wasn't going to happen until there was a major outcry. And now you're right, we're seeing that. But we have to also know that with regard to asylum law, there has to be an attorney general that will re-decide cases and roll back the cases that were decided by Sessions and Barr.
Right. Absolutely. Linda, let me ask you a quick final question for you. Are you hopeful?
We've developed relationships with people, really the families left behind when the principal breadwinner is deported, and that's usually the case. And it's usually the women left behind with the kids. We've developed relationships with them, we check in with them. They check in with us. We try to get them services. We network with the different other organizations to get them food, rental assistance, and just someone to call. I think that matters. That is important, and I think that I think we are making a difference. It's much bigger than us. Things are they're structural.
Right.
But I think we start somewhere, and I would like to think that that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can't send Laura all over the country to take these refugees and do their thing, but it's we got the first family, the one that we just got here, that came in that we just resettled, was the first refugee family that had come to Oklahoma since September of 2020. So we are seeing, and Catholic Charities is saying that they're anticipating now. It just takes a little bit of time now for everybody to get back up to be able to start getting the refugees in and to come in here. Laura, are you hopeful?
Unmute. Yeah.
Yes. With our administration, yes, I'm very hopeful that we will have more opportunities to share our love, our help, our respect.
I didn't know if are you helpful or are you hopeful? I thought you said are you helpful?
Are you hopeful?
Actually,
are you hopeful? Okay, go ahead, Laura. I think that
I am hopeful that we'll have more people that can be free, and we are helpful when we accept and help and and wish for a better life for them.
I just wanted to add, though, that, it's really a mutual feeling, though. I don't want to make it sound like, here I am just helping these poor people. They very much have enriched my life. I get so much. I get so much strength from them spiritually. To when I just am so impressed with what they've been able to endure and how they can still just pull for. And I think, oh my gosh, I worry about petty things. And these are people that have I don't know, they're just wired differently because of what they've been through. And I admire them, and I'm humbled by them, so I just want to say it's very mutual. This relationship is something that's very beautiful. And I have grown so much. And it's something that I do not because I want to help them, but because it also uplifts me and makes me a little stronger person too.
Well, as the son of two Holocaust survivors, I appreciate very much what you do, what you do, and obviously Laura is Holocaust related as well with relatives that she had, and how important that is for us to be doing what we do. I think Linda, that we've been doing a vigil here in Oklahoma City for coming 3.5 years now. That's what we've been doing. We've gone from one ICE office to another because they kept moving it, and we kept following them until finally, now that Biden was elected, we've stopped with the ICE office and gone to Langford's office every week, so that he knows that there's a vigil going on about immigration policy at his office downtown. So,
I love that. That's so great.
And Rex, you made reference to the Bible, and for those who may not know, in the Hebrew text, the commandment that God speaks to the Jewish people the most is 38 times, and it's about the stranger, that you will take care of the stranger. That is the commandment for the Jewish people more than anything else that is in the Hebrew text. So with that, I think we will close, and I am very hopeful. I am hopeful that if nothing else that we can get done quickly will be the take care of the dreamers and make them permanent residents in this country so that they can go for their citizenship. I think that would be the easiest thing that we could go for right away, and hopefully that will happen. So I'd like to thank Rex very much. Linda, thank you. And Laura, thank you for all that you all do, whatever. And You guys were wonderful this evening. And with that, I will say good night. And please join us again in June for our next panel discussion. Oh, if you would like to know the information for Linda and Sanctuary Project, they will have it at OCC. Give OCC, Oklahoma Conference of Churches, a call. If you would like to know more about the families that we are taking care of here at Temple B'nai Israel, Laura will be able to give you all the information, and you can get her contact information at OCC as well. And the same thing for Rex, is to contact OCC, and they will be happy to be able to get you in touch with them. And with that, I will say good evening, and thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks to all of you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Enjoy being with you all.